Welcome back to Sail to Sleep, where tonight we're diving into a darker chapter of maritime history. Tonight's story isn't about mythical creatures luring sailors to their doom with enchanted songs. No, this tale is about something far more real, more documented, and in many ways more troubling. This is the story of San Francisco's Barbary Coast, where the Sirens were flesh and blood, and their methods were disturbingly effective. Picture San Francisco in the 1860s and 70s. The gold rush has transformed a sleepy harbor into a roaring port city. And along the waterfront, a district is taking shape that will become legendary for all the wrong reasons. 3 blocks of Pacific Street, stretching through what we now call Chinatown and North Beach, earned a nickname borrowed from the pirate-infested shores of North Africa. They called it the Barbary Coast. The name wasn't chosen lightly. Just as the African Barbary Coast was notorious for pirates who preyed on passing vessels, San Francisco's version became infamous for predators of a different sort. These weren't sea raiders, but land sharks who hunted sailors the moment their boots touched solid ground. And among the most effective of these predators were women known as the pretty waiter girls. These women worked in the dance halls, concert saloons, and drinking establishments that lined Pacific Street like barnacles on a hull. They were paid between $15 and $25 a week, a decent wage for the era, but their real earnings came from a darker trade. They were waitresses, yes, and entertainers, certainly, but they were also bait in an elaborate trap designed to separate sailors from every penny they'd earned during months at sea. The system was brutally efficient. A sailor, fresh off a merchant vessel after a grueling voyage that might have lasted a year or more, would wander into one of these establishments seeking companionship and entertainment. The pretty waiter girls would approach, charming and attentive, offering drinks and conversation. What the sailor didn't know was that those drinks were often laced with laudanum or opium, potent substances that would render him unconscious or disoriented. Some establishments, according to historical records, were even more sinister in their methods. Buildings along the waterfront featured trap doors in their floors, hidden beneath carpets or strategically placed furniture. A drugged sailor might find himself suddenly plummeting into a cellar, only to wake hours later aboard a ship bound for Shanghai or some other distant port, his pockets empty and his freedom gone. This practice became so common in San Francisco that it gave the English language a new verb, to Shanghai. The women who worked this trade weren't all willing participants. Many were desperate, driven to the Barbary Coast by poverty or circumstance. Some had come west during the gold rush, hoping to find prosperity, but discovering instead that opportunities for women in a mining boomtown were painfully limited. Others had been trafficked from the East Coast or even from overseas, promised legitimate work, only to find themselves trapped in a system they couldn't escape. Yet, some of these women wielded considerable power within this dark economy. Historical accounts speak of figures like Miss Piggott, who operated a saloon and boarding house on Davis Street. Contemporary descriptions paint her as a fierce woman who worked with crimps, the men who orchestrated the Shanghaiing operations. Her establishment featured the infamous trapdoor system, and her crimp, a man known only as Nico, would maneuver unsuspecting sailors into position before they disappeared into the cellar below. Then there was Mother Bronson, another female crimp, who boasted that she could knock out an ox with a single punch. According to the records, no one ever challenged her to prove it. Both women utilized cocktails doctored with opium and those same trapdoors to capture their involuntary victims, earning blood money from ship captains desperate for crews. The pretty waiter girls employed subtler methods. They would pick pockets as they danced with sailors, their fingers as skilled as any professional thief. The saloon owners instructed them to return half their takings to management, creating a partnership in theft that enriched the establishments while leaving the women barely scraping by. It wasn't unusual for these women to put drugs directly into customers' drinks, making them easier targets for robbery and sometimes clubbing them unconscious for good measure. San Francisco wasn't alone in this practice, though it perfected the art to an unprecedented degree. Liverpool, London, Portland, and dozens of other ports saw similar operations. Wherever ships gathered, these land-based predators followed. The difference was scale and brazenness. By the 1890s, estimates suggest that nearly 100,000 men were drugged or tricked into working on ships from San Francisco and Portland alone. The sailors themselves were often powerless against these tactics. They signed contracts that lasted years, were paid only at voyage's end, and had little legal protection. Many had been pressed into service to begin with, making them desperate for any taste of freedom when they reached port. That desperation made them vulnerable, and the pretty waiter girls knew exactly how to exploit it. The Barbary Coast's reign finally ended in 1917, when San Francisco's mayor declared he would close every brothel in the city. But for more than 50 years, this district had operated as a place where the sirens were real. Their songs were promises of pleasure and companionship, and their victims were left stripped of dignity, money, and sometimes even their freedom. The myth of Sirens speaks of supernatural beings whose beauty and voice proved irresistible and deadly. The reality of the Barbary Coast was somehow darker still, because these sirens were human, driven by survival and greed, operating in a system that ground up everyone it touched. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into maritime history's shadows, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Sail to Sleep. Until next time, may your anchors hold fast and your voyages be safe.